Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for the return of the Exploring ePortfolio Technologies webinar series. This is the first session of our spring 2012 session. We have a great lineup for the next few weeks, so hopefully you'll be coming back for future sessions. Our next one is in February, and we have information about that at the end of this session. My name is Patty Donahue. I'm from ePortfolio, California, and along with my partner in crime, Judy Batson, and our host for this session, Trent Batson, we want to welcome you and thank you for taking time out of your day to join us for this session featuring Pebblepad. Those of you who haven't joined us in the past, this is a collaborative team effort project between ABLE, ePortfolio California, and EPAC. And it was really inspired from our years talking to community members about which ePortfolio technology should they use, which one's right for them. We did a survey last spring, and based on your concerns, your questions, your comments, we put together this series of exploring the different tools that are available today. One of our goals for this is to create a resource that will be available. This session is being recorded, and we will send out that link so you can share it with your colleagues or those that aren't joining us today. We will also be transferring a resource document at the end of this session, which will give you links to the archives, also a comparison matrix of all of the sessions that we're having side by side, their technical information, and also the teaching and learning information, some of that we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to start right away with a poll. This is a poll that we've been giving for each of our sessions. So if I could please direct your attention to the screen. Let me get this multiple choice up and ask you, which factor is most important when considering an ePortfolio solution for your institution? So we have A, interoperability with existing campus systems. B, is it pricing and licensing? That's definitely a concern. C, assessment capabilities. D, teaching and learning. E, all of the above, and then if you have some other answer, we'd really love to hear that, and you can chat that in the window. But if you look into the upper left box of your Illuminate room, you'll see a participants window, and you'll see A, B, C, D, and E up there. And if you could just take a moment and tell us which of these factors is most important when considering an ePortfolio solution for your institution. And we'll give you just a minute to complete that poll. Also, if you haven't yet, we would love to know who you are and where you're from. So if you can take a moment to also just chat your name, your institution, and anything else that you want to share with us. Okay, it looks like we're almost there. Again, if you haven't yet, please tell us which of these is your most important concern. E, all of the above. Looks like that's our winner. So I am going to publish our statistics. So none means that some of you aren't either seeing the participants box that has the choices, or maybe you're just not concerned at this point. So let's carry on. Without further delay, I'd like to introduce our host for this session. He is truly a pioneer in the educational technology industry for the past 25 years, and for the past 10 years, he's been focused on electronic portfolios. It is my great pleasure to welcome the Executive Director of the ABLE organization, Dr. Trent Batson. And Trent, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Patty. This is Trent, and glad to see everyone here. Welcome all. I see that we even have at least one person from Australia, and it must be at a very early morning hour there, but thanks for coming on. This is a great series. We've been very happy with the turnout, both in the fall and then starting out now. So we really appreciate Patty from ePortfolio California working so hard on this, and it's a session that it's a webinar series will continue during the spring. And then, even though I haven't talked with Patty about this yet, we hope that we can do something next year as well. So it's been a great way for people to learn more about the various technologies that are available. Today we're focusing on Pebblepad, which some of you in this country, in the United States, may not have heard too much about. But Pebblepad is the most popular electronic portfolio system in the UK and also in Australia. So worldwide, Pebblepad is quite well known. And so we thought it might be really useful for people in this country to learn a little more about Pebblepad and why it has become so widely adopted around the world. So we are very lucky to have with us today Shane Sutherland, who's been involved with this for quite a long time. I remember meeting Shane for the first time in London in 2005 and realized that he was an important part of this whole ePortfolio community around the world. So we're very happy to have him with us today. Just to give you his official, and you can read it there on the screen also, he says he's an active contributor to the ePortfolio community. Shane's diverse learning career evolved into a varied teaching career, ultimately working as a principal lecturer in education at the University of Wolverhampton. Shane introduced Pebblepad to the university in 2004 and spent 3 years as the ePortfolio coordinator at Wolverhampton. Drawing upon his learning and teaching background and with considerable experience to fuel his ideas, Shane is now promoting the concept of the personal learning space and is busy overseeing the design of Pebble Plus, which I guess is the next version of Pebblepad. So we're very happy to have you with us, Shane, and I'll just hand it off to you now. Welcome.
Hi, Trent. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to share some of our ideas, some of our experiences with you. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what sort of questions the delegates have for us today. We're not familiar with really what goes on in North America. We've been over to the last 2 ABLE conferences, or the only 2 ABLE conferences actually, and I did some work while I was still at the university with the International ePortfolio Coalition, Research Coalition. So, but still really interested to see what questions arise and to find out whether what we're doing resonates with teachers and technologists' expectations over in North America. So, can everyone hear me okay? Because I'm not really quite sure at this stage whether you can. Can we? I take it that means yes, that's good. so I'll continue then. And what I'm going to do is try to leave as much time as possible for the conversation. So I'm going to whiz through a few slides. These are all going to be available after the presentation. There's a number of links on the final slide. And then I'm going to do a very quick demonstration of our software, and probably we'll return to it to show some examples when we get questions later on. So, on we go. And I do apologise, there's a bit more text than you might want to see on some of these. But as I say, you'll see them all later on, and you can peruse them at your leisure. So you'll see here, I've started off and said Pebblepad's not an ePortfolio, which is interesting because we spent the last, well certainly the first 3 or 4 years of our existence promoting ourselves as an ePortfolio, but hopefully that will make more sense as we go on. We're about to release a new version of our software. In fact, it's being released in 2 weeks' time on a sort of staged implementation basis in Australia because their new academic year starts at the beginning of February. And what we've done is, Pebblepad has grown. We work really closely with our community. We've got a fabulous bunch of teachers and indeed students who work with us, and we developed the system over the last 8 years, and it became quite big. And what we've done is we've stripped it right back, kept all the really important functionality, added some really nice new social tools, and we have this sort of thin layer now called Pebblepad 3, and built on it are different modules, if you like. And in this case, Pebble Plus is the personal learning space. So the plus bit, if you imagine a PLS making up the plus, is sort of a mangled contraction of plus, of personal learning space. And Atlas is what we're calling the active teaching, learning and assessment space. And that space there is where users send their work to be verified, validated, marked, supported by the institution. And we've got a very clear separation between the personal space and the institutional part of the system. So starting off with what is an ePortfolio, and this is this definition has been widely adopted in the UK. It's very similar to the definitions you see elsewhere. But it says that a portfolio is in essence a presentation. Now you don't need an ePortfolio system to make a digital presentation. You can make it, and I've seen many presentations where people have created portfolios using PowerPoints with hyperlinks. You can actually write an email and make lots of hyperlinks in an email to assets that exist somewhere, particularly now that assets are being widely distributed on Flickr and Vimeo and Facebook and the like. So for us, an ePortfolio really is just a presentation. That's it. And I think we've got a poll question coming next. So I'd just like to sort of get some sense of whether people think that's utter nonsense, or whether that's you sort of broadly agree with me. So if you agree, if you could tick the checkbox just underneath the participant window, and if you think I'm talking nonsense, click on the cross. That's spectacular. and unusual, I have to say. And I think there's a real problem that we have, certainly in the UK, with ePortfolio, the term being used to describe so many things. It's been used to describe a process, been used to describe a product, been used to describe a tool. Oh, sounds very convincing. So I'm being distracted by what's going in that window as well. I'll try and concentrate. Now, the JISC, which is a very important body in the UK which funds a lot of work in this area, said that, and it's a shame that there's no animations on this slide because I normally start with just the first statement, that behind every product or presentation are these rich processes. And I think a lot of people claim that these processes are somehow inherent in portfolios, and I think that's also nonsense. I've seen some very, very poor portfolios, and I've seen some very, very rich artifacts which aren't portfolios. And I think often it's about that they're the products of very good learning and teaching. And it could be a really, really well-written essay or report or group presentation which demonstrates all of those skills and processes described above. What I think we can do, though, is with very, very good ePortfolio systems, we can really start to promote some of those processes. And this is our sort of definition of what we would call an ideal ePortfolio system. Now, I know what it says. It's going to take you a few minutes, I think, to read that. So have a very quick glance through that. And I'm sorry to push you, but as I say, you can read this later. If you agree that that's a good definition of an ideal portfolio system, and I particularly like the idea about enrichment through sharing with people, let's move to the next poll. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you think your current institutional system measures up against that ideal system? So I'll go back so you can see the definition again. I guess we'll just do this in fact, how do we do this? Do we just do it in the chat window? Let's see what that says.
I think so.
Okay, marvellous. So in the chat window, just throw in a score about how well your system matches up against those ideal criteria. Obviously, don't get yourself in trouble with your boss by saying something nasty about the system they chose. Okay, that's interesting. And I guess someone's going to have the job of collating those scores later on. Thank you, Sandra, by the way. And moving on. And thank you for joining us. It must be really early where you are. Same time as Ian, I guess. Now, what we're working on now is this idea of a personal learning space. It sort of takes the idea of a portfolio a bit further. Often what happens with ePortfolio systems is they rely upon you uploading existing artifacts to them. And then often you can arrange them into different ways, into collections or presentations, and you can share them with others. But the expectation often is that you already have the skills of reflecting and planning and synthesizing or analyzing, and you do that outside of the tool, and then you upload the artifacts to the tool. And what we've been trying to do with Pebblepad, and what we have been doing indeed since we very first started in 2004, although we didn't realize at the time that we developed a personal learning space, is we provide lots of, if you like, wizards or templates, lots of scaffolds, prompts and nudges to help people to reflect or to analyze or to plan. And we've tried to design in particular very generic wizards, which mean that whether a student is doing a piece of directed activity at university, or whether they are responding to an experience they've had at work, or through volunteering they do, or through a general life experience, they can go to this space and they can make a record with some support, some scaffolding around it, because still we find lots and lots of learners, including a number of teachers we work with, are they're faced with the tyranny of a blank sheet of paper, and it's very difficult to start. So all we do with the personal learning space is provide lots of little structures to help you get started. And then, of course, all of these items that you create can be easily shared with others. You can add comments and feedback and provide then some sort of dynamic support which helps you continue to develop the artifact itself. So I'll move on from the idea of the personal learning space. And again, of course, this is going to be so difficult for you to read. But this suggests ways in which portfolios can be created. We never think of ePortfolio. We think about users having lots and lots of portfolios created for lots of reasons. And a portfolio for me is analogous to a story. And sometimes you tell very short stories that don't require a lot of evidence. Sometimes your stories are very informal. And sometimes the stories are very complex and they require lots of support because they're told against a set of criteria, maybe for a job specification or promotion or professional accreditation. And if you like, if you follow the arrow, it just takes you through a number of different points where you might find a really good reason to tell a story or to create a portfolio. And what we're really lucky to find in the UK is we've got lots and lots of staff, I don't know if you call them staff, faculty, employees using the system. So in a number of universities, staff use this for professional accreditation, performance review, appraisal, grant applications. And of course that's wonderful because they're so used to the system they can easily transfer its use to working with students. What else can I say about that? I suppose just to point out that one of our customers, it's called the Institute for Learning, has 100,000 members using this tool to support their continuing professional development processes. And more about that if there are questions later. So here's how we see the personal learning space situated. And in some ways it's no different to a very good ePortfolio system. On the left-hand side is the social networking space, on the right-hand side the typical institutional learning environment, and in this intersection in the middle is the personal learning space. And you can see from the descriptors at the bottom the different sort of context or the different rules around how they're provided. Institutions typically would provide the personal learning space, and it seems a bit of a paradox, but it's provided because it supports their approach to learning and teaching or personal and professional development. It makes sense to have a system which is supportive and consistent or sympathetic to their approach to learning and teaching. But all of the content in it is absolutely owned and controlled by individual learners or individual users. And what it gets away from is this idea that typically in an institutional learning environment, like what you call an LMS, often after you've finished a module or course or you've graduated, it's closed off to you and you can no longer access things. Whereas with the personal learning space, the idea is both teachers, mentors, students have an equal relationship in the system. They create things and they share them with each other and they get feedback and support. So here are some of our principles. I guess I'm kind of starting to run out of time and I ought to look in the window to see when Trent tells me to shut up. I would like a bit of time to do a quick demonstration. And just at the final page here, there are some links, which when you get the PowerPoint slides, of course, they'll be active links, and they take you to a whole bunch of things which you might find useful after this event. So what I'm going to do now, if I can make this work, is to share my window and give you a very, very quick tour of Pebblepad. And okay, hopefully that's come up. What I'm going to do, there is a little option I think where you can view just the thing as a whiteboard. You should get a bigger view of that, or you may be able to stretch it. So I'm cheating somewhat, but also taking a bit of a gamble because this is our new system. It's not actually released yet. It's going out, as I say, in 2 weeks' time. But it gives me a really good opportunity just to show you broadly how it's structured. The idea is that you create new things, and that may be adding a new blog post, a new file, and we have all of these little templates, and a number of templates are default, they're available in the system. You can build your own templates, you can share templates with each other. So if you're a nursing student and you've created a really nice reflective template, you can share that with people you like. In the summer you'll be able to publish that to a worldwide library of templates for Pebblepad users across the world. So these are our simple things. These help you structure inputs. If I quickly show you one of those, it really is just a little form, and you fill it in. And when you're filling it in, if you want to, you can make hyperlinks to perhaps evidence in your store. Oh, not sure quite what happened there. Oh, I'm logged out. I've been in it too long. That's a shame. That's the problem with preparing well in advance. So let's log that back in there. Ooh. Okay, I think what we may have to do is try that again. Yeah, there's my assets. So I can just choose one of these things and make a link. So even with a very simple form, I can make hyperlinks to objects outside the system, or indeed inside the system too. And I'll come back to that in a moment actually, to show you things like sharing and tagging. So I won't save that. So there are very simple inputs. And of course you can upload any kind of file, audio, video, images. The designs are the more complex things. So if you're building an ePortfolio, for instance, what I'll do is very quickly build an ePortfolio. We call them web folios. I'll give this a name. Let's call this Able Demo. Oh, lost the ability to type. And I've got some pre-prepared, well thought through text. And now what I'm going to do is flick back to this. On a wider screen, of course, these sit side by side. And I think, well, in the top of this, I'd quite like a bit of a image or media, then text. And then I'd like maybe text and image. Let's pop some text in there. Pop some text in there. Choose an image. Here we go. Confirm that. And this could be video. And by the time this is released, it will include the ability to add Vimeo, YouTube, Flickr images in there. And I'll add a box jellyfish, I think, actually. And that's my web folio taking shape. If I want to have a look, because this is of course edit mode, and in fact you can't quite see, but I can do things like, I don't know, give that a heading, and there are lots more headings going in there, of course. I can make hyperlinks, web links, links to people. So this is my edit mode. If I want to see how it looks in real life, I just flick across here. And if I don't like the banner, I can do that. Move through the banners. I don't know how well this is working at your end. On mine, it's gliding beautifully smoothly. So let me go halfway through so you can see what's going on. There we go. And I decide how I want it to look. And of course, this is actually preview mode. When you look at it in full view mode, that lays across a whole background image as well. So it's very pretty, and users get, I think, quite a thrill from the ability to design really, really nice artifacts really, really easily. So just close that, and if I go to my asset store and very quickly talk about sharing, because I know this will come up as a question. If I, let's see, what shall I take? I'll take sharing in Morocco again, view that. Let's just close this to make it nice and simple. If I decide I want to share this, I get a share. Oh, I realised that on this version, sharing isn't working on files. I was told that before I came in, so I'll take that one. In fact, I can share from here, actually. The sharing is just like a little email. I can start typing people in. It knows who it is I'm likely to want to share with. Maybe Colin's in here. Yeah. And I've got a BCC field. I can allow people to comment on this, maybe contribute to it. If I've got linked assets, I can give them slightly different permissions on the linking. And I can allow them to see maybe feedback if I choose to, or grades, or actually decide that they can't see anything that's written about the piece of work. And I can choose how long it's shared for, and say, hey, I'm sharing this with you because I'd really like some feedback on whether you think this is reflective or rather too descriptive. And the other thing which is really important to us, of course, you'll see here, is tagging. So if I want to tag this, it's really easy. Again, you can just see my existing tags actually, and drag them or double click them up into here, or I can just start adding a tag. So I don't think I've got an able tag yet. So tagging is really important because assets that I add to the system will be useful in lots of different ways. So that's how that works, and I guess later on we might get a chance to look at the existing system because that has lots of example pieces in it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just temporarily pause that, draw breath, allow you to draw breath, and see how Trent wants to go forward.
This is a good overview. I'm sure that many people listening who are in the United States might be intrigued, and they're probably wondering if they wanted to investigate using Pebblepad. Is it possible to do that in the United States?
Well, thanks for starting with such an easy question, Trent.
Yes, I know.
The situation at the moment is we don't have any salespeople. We rely on people like Sandra, who's in this group at the moment, and institutions telling others about how well we look after them and what a good experience they get. And so it's very difficult or very dangerous for us to move into new territories, and we've been concentrating on getting Pebble Plus or Pebble Free developed. We'll be back at Able this year, and I think by then Pebble 3 and Pebble Plus will be fully released. And I think if we had 2 or 3 customers who were all interested at the same time and were prepared to work together and with us so that we could start a community of users, because it's not much fun being in the community of one. So although we have 120 or so customers in the UK and Australia, it'd be unfortunate to have a community of one in North America. So if we can find enough interest in the platform, I think we might well be tempted to come over and see what we can do.
Thanks, Shane. A number of people have been asking about either the assessment management capabilities, and Emily has also asked about the seeing the administrative views. Okay.
So in terms of administration, the personal learning space itself, or Pebble Plus, has very little administration because it relies on it's a user-based system. So they build whatever they want to build, control whatever they need to control. But we have another part of the system which is called Atlas. And if I can unfreeze this a moment, so I think if I do that, my application should come alive again. And there's this linked part of the system, which hopefully is going to open over here. Boom, 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 boom. Maybe I should have opened this before. Oh, flip. That's not great, is it? So let me go to gateways here. The other thing I forgot to mention is actually my demonstration is coming from Australia. So let's try. Did I try yes last time or no last time?
You clicked on no.
Okay, that's not looking too happy there. So I can go to another version of this. If I tab away and go, I think, to this. So this is the old version. This is actually my account. I've got lots of active stuff we can look at in a moment. So we have a new version of Gateways, much more impressive than this. But what happens at the administration level is teachers, we have an integration with Blackboard and other LMSs to create these, is you set up classes in Gateways in the new system called Atlas, and users submit work to them. And you can organize users into smaller groups within a gateway. One of our customers, the University of Wolverhampton, has over 3,000 gateways to organise student submissions. On the gateways, you can do things like peer review, anonymous peer review, marking, grading, create feedback templates, rubrics. You can have external examiners come in to verify the work that's on here. And I think, notwithstanding all of the fabulous administration processes, including, by the way, archiving, where you can take a complete snapshot of all of the work that's on here, there's a tool which allows you, when users submit their work to the gateway, they're submitting a piece of work which is still in process or in progress. So they can submit work right at the beginning of a module or course. It may have very little content on it, and then during the time span of the course, they can keep on adding to it, adding comments, responding to feedback from mentors or coaches or peers. And it's only at the end of the process, when the teacher clicks a button or sets a preset date, that the work is actually locked. And then it's locked in an accessible state. And then, as I say, you can feedback and mark on it, and then you can take an archive of it. And so you get a complete snapshot of the work. But most of our customers now would be asking students to submit things in draft form, particularly things like blogs and webfolios, so they can see them developing over time and provide feedback over time as well. So does that go anywhere near answering the question?
It seems then that you have one module that's for learning interactions, and then a separate one that is for assessment. Is that correct?
It is, and what we wanted to do, and what we've done further in the new system, is to really suggest there's a strong separation between the personal learning space and the system that provides all of the assessment functionality that institutions need. So typically institutions want to do things like run reports, and they want to know about who submitted and when they submitted and how well they're performing. All of those activities are inconsistent with the idea of personal learning space. And if you imagine that a very large number of our users are professional users, they are members of staff, what you absolutely have to avoid is any sense of surveillance or policing in that personal learning space, because it alters the voice, the nature of the items that are recorded within it. So the personal space is absolutely personal and private, as much as anything can be that sits on a server, because of course the server administrators can go in and they can look through the databases, but there are no built-in interfaces to allow people to look at other people's accounts or to look at other people's assets. If you want them to be viewed by the institution, you send them to a gateway. And if I very quickly show you how that works, if I just close the gateway and go and choose one of my assets, so this is of course the old version, but I can choose a webfolio. I've got lots of webfolios or portfolios. I'm going to take this CMALT one. I'm going to send it. Now I can send it normally to a person or publish it to the web, but in this case I'm going to send it to a gateway. This is a gateway I belong to, so I'm going to publish it to that gateway. And then if I scroll down, you'll see my work is now on this gateway. It's just a link back to that piece of work on my asset store. It provides no access to any other work that's in the store, and it allows me to carry on working on it until the gateway is locked, but it allows the tutor to open it up, to have a look at it, to provide feedback, to work through the various pages, and because the webfolio acts as a sort of a parent for other things, anything which is linked to it you can also see. So that's how the, if you like, the two parts of the system work together.
Good. Thanks very much, Shane. We have some questions in the chat space, which we'll get to shortly. But we also have a set of questions that we've asked of all our participants, all the vendors who have made presentations over the last few months. So I'd like to pose those for you as well. The first one is about your vision of learning and how that promotes a student-centered approach. In other words, student ownership. And if you have examples, that would be great too.
Well, I think our starting point was that we all learn all the time in lots of different contexts. And what we didn't want to do was build a system which was tailored in any way to a particular course or module. The idea is that with the tools that are built into the system, so the wizards and the very flexible web folios, which you can build obviously from scratch, that curriculum experts, if you like, said, well, look, it looks like for this particular module or this particular credit-bearing unit, it would be really useful to build an action plan and to keep a blog each week that we teach, and then to draw 3 of the best examples from your blog along with the action plan and stitch them together as a little story in a portfolio and submit that for assessment. So Pebblepad just sits there in the background and is utilized by people who know how they want to use it. So that would be if you like, a teacher designing a series of linked activities which they ask the students to do on this tool provided by their institution. At the same time, the student may well be volunteering or working part-time, maybe already a professional, and hopefully sees the benefits of using the tool to support their own ends. And in fact, Sandra is a really good example that's joined us today. My understanding, and there's a really nice video that you can follow from this link, Sandra, and I may get the story slightly wrong, so forgive me, Sandra, if it is wrong, but Sandra was using this on a course she was undertaking at Charles Sturt University in Australia, and I think, in her own words, sort of hated it to start with because it was forcing her to be reflective or to plan, and she didn't quite see the whole purpose of it. It was just another piece of technology used in a particular module. It wasn't presented as a lifelong or life-wide tool. And she submitted a piece of work and then decided that she thought she might start uploading to it pieces of work she'd created in the past related to her veterinary practice. And as she put new pieces of work into it, I think again in her words, a pattern started to emerge of all of the experience and all of the skills that she had. And she started to aggregate those pieces, and she made a presentation which she submitted, and I think got advanced standing or APAL accreditation for prior learning when she submitted to her university. So the idea is the tool can be, you can be directed to use it or asked to use it to submit pieces of work in the same way as you can be asked to use your own home computer or own laptop to write an essay for assessment. But also the tool is owned by, or the content certainly is owned by you, access is free beyond the institution, and you do things which you choose to do, which you think are beneficial. Now, what I have to say is, it does require, and this is a hurdle we have to overcome, we wrote a book this year which has got something like 40 learning designs in, again submitted by our community. But too often teachers are told to use this tool with their students and they don't quite understand it, and they ask their students to do things which are more easily done as a Word document or a PowerPoint. So it's about trying to convince teachers of good ways to use it so that they can get their students doing developing effective learning practices, and then students themselves will think, I can also use it in this way and this way and this way. And we've tried to build many more social elements into the new version as well, so students or users can much more easily find out what others are doing with it and share work between themselves. Sorry, that's probably a bit of a ramble there, apologise.
That's all right, Shane. It does seem like you are thinking about student-centered design. The second question that we want to ask of all of our vendors is about using your application to help students achieve their goals, such as getting to graduate school, career placement and advancement, etc. Do you have examples of that?
We certainly have lots of examples of, I think it's probably a later step, things like professional accreditation for students like nurses and teachers. So there's a part of the system which, if I do a quick filter again, is called profiles. And so if I show you, for instance, the professional standards for, this is for qualifying teachers, there's a tool within the system which allows you to build these profiles. What we don't do, because as well as being, if you like, learner-centric, we're hopefully we're supportive of what teachers do. And so these profiles can be easily shared amongst institutions. You don't have to come back to us to have them made. We provide the tools to build them. Very, very easy to build. But users are told exactly what they have to do to achieve a particular endpoint, an end goal. They can add evidence against these. They get indications of how they're progressing. And these profiles, if they're submitted to a gateway, also provide quite sophisticated reporting. So you can see how a particular cohort is measuring up against each other and against other cohorts. So there's quite a bit of reporting linked to these as well. Now, that's almost within a course where an institution says these are things you have to do, or competencies you have to attend to. But of course, because of things like the Webfolio, a user only has to look at a job specification or the terms of a grant application, and they can very easily build a Webfolio and make links to evidence which supports or talks to those requirements. Let's think of another example we might have. So at the University of Sussex, all of the careers, sponsored by the careers unit, careers and employability unit, all students of that particular university have access to Pebblepad. And they do a series of, whenever they go to sort of seminars or employability activities, they are creating evidence and tagging it in the system, all with a view to making strong presentations for jobs, or to move on indeed from the undergraduate programs onto the postgraduate programs. So there's a very clear strategy at that particular institution that it's about using the tool to gather a broad range of evidence to progress from the university or to progress to the next level of university. At places like La Trobe in Melbourne in Australia, they have a series of clearly articulated graduate attributes. And what they've done is made the graduate attributes tags within the system. And students, whenever they create any piece of work, either voluntarily or as a result of work they've done as part of their coursework, they can tag their work against these various graduate attributes. And so as they move towards their graduation point, they can see where there's how the balance of their evidence points to one or more of those broad attributes, and see if they need to develop particular skills, maybe, I don't know, entrepreneurship or global citizenship. So there are a number of ways in which the tool can be utilized to prepare people for graduateness, or prepare them for employment or a professional accreditation.
Thanks a lot, Shane. We probably should just jump into some of the questions from the chat box. We have a number of those. Emily from the University of Michigan was asking about scalability. You may know that the University of Michigan is a very, very large university with, I think, tens of thousands of students. I don't know the exact number, but it might be around 50,000. And so she was wondering how it could scale up to handle a large number of accounts.
Okay, well that's pretty easy. There are 30,000 active users currently on the University of Wolverhampton's installation, and the Institute for Learning, who actually they don't call their system Pebblepad, it's called Reflect, but it's the same system. They have 100,000 active users on their tool. And then that's actually, if I may go off on a bit of a tangent, they have a fabulous setup at the Institute for Learning, because all of their members have access to Pebblepad as a member benefit. And during the year, they record various professional development activities that they do, and they can add hours, how long they spent on each particular activity. And these hours are aggregated into what we call a development log, or an activity log. And at the end of the year, when they have to make their annual return to the Institute, instead of allowing the Institute to look at that particular log, or to look at their portfolio account, which of course would be inconsistent with our views, they more or less click a button and they submit a synopsis from that record to the Institute's membership system. So it will say, for instance, that I was required to do 40 hours. I actually did 52, so there's a balance of 12. And I did it in these particular areas, and that my work was peer-reviewed. And what that means is the member remains in absolute control of their personal learning space. They send the data that's required almost automatically, but of course they have to consent to it being sent to the membership system. And all of the data harvesting takes place on the member database, not in the personal learning space. So the idea of this control is deeply embedded into that particular process.
Great. Barbara has wanted to know, and others might actually be interested in this question also, is if you could just use Pebblepad and get rid of Blackboard or any other learning management system.
Oh, wow. I so wish I could show you the new gateways, the system called Atlas. What's been really interesting, and it's this requires, I guess, a much longer chat between us all, but teachers were often distanced from the learner management system by having to work through learning technologists or content developers. And when they started using Pebblepad and the ePortfolio, in fact, I can quickly show you it's a bit of a rubbish example, but it's an example nonetheless. Somewhere in here I did a presentation about accessibility, and we used a webfolio to do it, and instead of using a PowerPoint, we just wrote the content onto here, and at various points there are links, I think, to various artifacts, and it's built in exactly the same way as I would, in the same way as I would build a story or a portfolio about what I can do. Teachers started to write stories about their courses, and they would share them with their students. And instead of writing all the story in one go, they would write the story week by week, and they would say, remember when we talked about this? Well, here's a slide which may really help you. And the students would start to contribute to it. So we're finding more and more that teachers are often against the will of the institution, I have to say, so there's some tensions, but are starting to use the tools within Pebblepad to manage their own course materials, their own learning objects, and to share them with each other, share them with the students. And actually it's quite consistent with the idea of your growing portfolio store. Because if a teacher creates learning content, well, that is actually very good evidence of either their professional knowledge or skills or their engagement with their students, and it ought to live in their personal learning space because it's evidence for their accreditation, appraisal, performance review, and they just choose to share it with students for as long as the students are part, and often what this is allows students to carry on using it. So yes, and I think particularly in Atlas what we've done, if I go away from this, and what I'll do actually is quickly open another tab, and go to, if I was I'm not sure if you can say this in America, but if I was a lady, I would be able to type this and carry on talking to you. But because I'm not, I have to stop and look and think. So this should let me go in. Boom, boom, boom. Fingers crossed, everybody. So what have we got here? So here's some workspaces I'm managing. this is the dashboard for Atlas. Users wouldn't see all of this. These are the management settings. What they would get is an introduction page. So this is the new version of what was gateways. And instead of just the submissions, so work handed into the gateway, they get a page which can explain what the course is all about, how to contact people if there's a problem. These pages are actually built using the same ePortfolio builder that we've seen in the portfolio system. They submit work. There are resources, are none shown here, but you can add resources to support the assessment process. And there's an area called conversations, which is in essence I've got a message saying I've been disconnected. Reconnect. Can you hear?
Welcome to the CCC Confer Conference.
Hopefully. Is everyone still there? Hopefully so. Oh, I'm fine, thank you, Emily. Brilliant. So, what's really, I think, lovely about what we've done with these new gateways.
Please don't disconnect that next time.
Is, for instance, okay, thank you. The conversations, and I've not got a good example to show you here, but when people contribute to it, I'm hearing an awful lot of background noise going on now, Patty.
Sorry about that. I'm trying to reconnect the phone bridge, guys, so please don't cancel that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, good.
Sorry about that.
So is everyone else, they've left us at the moment, haven't they?
Confer Conference Center. For security verification, please enter your passcode followed by the pound or hash key.
Sorry, folks.
Please hold. Thank you. Your passcode is confirmed. Please.
Okay. Hopefully everyone's back now.
Join the meeting.
We're back now. Thank you.
Isn't technology marvelous? So what happens on the conversations here is it's a bit like a forum. And this particular feature isn't on here yet, but if people are talking about the assessment activity they're involved in, they can actually, they can do things like quote. So I'll do a couple of quotes here. And this is obviously a rubbish demonstration. But if I post a reply, I can post those quotes in. I can write about those. And what's really nice is if I persuade somebody of an idea that I had, I explain something really clearly, I can go to this conversation, I can select relevant parts of it, and I can save that as an asset to my personal learning space, and then use that as evidence of a particular skill that I've demonstrated. It's true actually also, I've not shown you yet, and I'm not sure if I can, what I'm going to try to do is, I'm going to open another, no, it's too difficult. What often happens with our artifacts in Pebblepad, let me go back from here, and I think I probably need to go to, where did we go? We've lost our, no. With all of the assets that are in Pebblepad, you can share them and you can give people commenting permissions. And we see some fabulous conversations evolving around assets which are being shared. And the conversations, in many ways, are more valuable than the asset itself. So one of the things that we can do in the new system is to allow people to choose elements of that particular conversation and to save it as a fixed conversation, which becomes a fixed asset in their store, which they can then start having a conversation around. So if that didn't make sense, it's probably because I didn't explain it very well. But you can take a snapshot of a conversation, save it, and then share it with someone else and say, does this conversation demonstrate my ability to explain complex problems? And someone may reply to that and say, well, it does, but maybe you could have added this particular element to what you said. And so a new conversation can evolve around an existing conversation. I'll stop talking because I know we're getting towards the end. I'm getting into ramble mode.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Shane. We are actually very close to the end, and so I'm going to hand it off to Patty and Judy to do the concluding parts. But thanks again very much for this presentation. It's been very, very enlightening. Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much, Shane. That was great. You did a wonderful job. And just a reminder to everybody that we are recording this session. So if you missed any parts, if you want to go back and hear some of that information, the link will be available later today. So coming up close to the top of the hour, just a couple more pieces of business. One exciting thing is, and we've been able to do this on several sessions in the past, but we are very fortunate to get a copy of Documenting Learning with ePortfolios, a guide for college instructors. And this is a new publication from Tracy Penny-Light, Helen Chen, and John Idelson. So thank you, John, so much for donating a copy of this book. And I've randomly drawn somebody from the audience, and we will just ask you to put your address, name and address in the chat window, but it goes to Danielle. So Danielle, if you're still with us, your name was drawn to receive a copy of this, and thank you again for joining us. So if you're still with us, Danielle, put your name and address in the chat window. Also, for everyone else, you can review this book and order it online at www.documentinglearning.com. And you can find out more about that wonderful new publication. In wrapping up, I just want to once again thank everyone for joining us. The three organizations that have collaborated on this project. There's some information about ePortfolio California on screen now. One of the things that ePortfolio California is involved in is following the work of the PESC Academic ePortfolio Work Group. And I believe John Idelson's with us today, or he was. And John is the co-chair of that work group. Their upcoming meeting, I believe, is tomorrow, and there's information about that meeting on the ePortfolio California website, which is right there to the left of John's picture. Also, there's other resources that we're accumulating. We still have the archive sessions from the 2001 AAC&U ePortfolio Forum. Their upcoming event is happening at the end of this month in Washington, D.C. But if you haven't checked out some of the last year's sessions, they are also available on the ePortfolio California website. Also, Helen Chen, co-director of EPAC, along with John Idelson, fortunately isn't with us here today, but she asked us to remind you all that she really does have a wonderful and growing community there with the EPAC. So if you're interested in joining that, you can go to epac.pbworks.com and get on her listserv. And then finally, and I'll go ahead and turn this over to Judy to talk a little bit more about their conferences, but you're invited to join the ABLE community, and there's information on how to do that. Go to the aaeebl.org website. And Judy, I don't know if you want to come online and talk real quickly about the conferences that you're having.
Yes, thank you, Patty. I just wanted to say that we have several conferences coming up. Two of them we have call for proposals out on. And I'm going to put a URL in the window for the main conference, which is in July in Boston. The proposal deadline is February 3rd. And the other conference, which is happening in Utah, is going to be, a proposal deadline is going to be actually January 24th. It was just changed right before this session. And thank you.
And also, everyone, I'm sorry I forgot to get to this sooner, but I just transferred 2 documents to you. And so if they pop up on your screen, you have the option to save these or not. But one of them is the matrix that we're building, and you can see each of the sessions that we've been having, the fall session group and now the spring, seated side by side, so you can compare pricing and system requirements and all kinds of technical information about these wonderful technology tools, and then as well as the Pebblepad specific resource handout, which will take you to the webinar archive and other information about Pebblepad. So unless you have any other questions, we'll be signing off now, and thank you again for joining us. Our next session is Wednesday, February 8th, and we'll be interviewing TaxStream. So have a wonderful day. Thank you.